around AD 96, the Apostle John penned the last book of the Bible known as Revelation. In it, he wrote a series of prophecies about what are supposed judgments by God upon the earth. Chapter 8, verses 10 and 11 are what are known as the Wormwood Prophecy. On July 4th, 2005, NASA sent a probe to a comet named Tempel 1. They sent this probe and smashed it into the comet in order to determine what comets are made of. I remember hearing news articles about it, and as a science enthusiast, I was fascinated to learn what they would discover. When I heard what they actually did discover, and having read and studied the Bible for over 25 years, my thoughts immediately turned to the Wormwood Prophecy. This evening, I'd like to take a look at the Wormwood Prophecy and see how it compares to recent discoveries about comets. John starts out the prophecy by saying that a great star fell from heaven. According to the Planetary Society, Tempel 1 is about 4 miles in diameter, and it weighs 160 trillion pounds. And believe it or not, they say this is a small comet. According to the Western Washington University Planetarium website, the average meteorite is about the size of your fingernail or smaller. So you can imagine if something like this were to fall into our atmosphere, it would certainly match the description of a great star, exactly as John describes. Going on in the prophecy, he says, it was burning like a torch. And you know that meteorites, when they fall through the atmosphere, light up the sky. Imagine if something that was flammable came through our atmosphere. It turns out that the Keck 2 telescope, observing the impact, discovered a number of organic compounds in the comet, including methanol, acetylene, and ethane. And each of these is highly flammable. The one that really caught my attention was methyl cyanide, because at the time, I mistakenly believed that methyl cyanide was poisonous, but in fact, it's highly flammable. So you can imagine if a highly flammable object came into our atmosphere, it would certainly match John's description and burn like a torch. John then goes on to say that it fell on a third of the rivers, a third of the fresh water supply on Earth. But how could something, a star, fall on a third of the fresh waters on Earth and not destroy the planet? It turns out that comets are known for breaking up, even in outer space. And actually, they're considered to be giant, dirty snowballs. So here you have a giant, dirty snowball, flammable, coming through the atmosphere. It would likely break up into many pieces, and if it was of sufficient size, it could certainly land on a third of the freshwater supplies. The last section of the Wormwood Prophecy says the star was named Wormwood. Wormwood is a bitter but non-poisonous plant known to John and his contemporary readers. He calls it wormwood because it made the waters bitter. Many men died from the waters. Many people died from it. Well, you remember methyl cyanide? It turns out that not only is it highly flammable, but when it gets heated, it actually turns into poisonous hydrogen cyanide. Looking up the information on poisonous hydrogen cyanide, I found from the American Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry that it has a faint, bitter almond odor and a bitter taste. Does the word bitter ring a bell? How could John have described an event like this with such accuracy? Not only that, but hydrogen cyanide is also not able to be smelled by 20 to 40% of the human population because of a genetic condition. And therefore, the smell of hydrogen cyanide is not an adequate warning of its presence. So if water was contaminated with hydrogen cyanide, 1/3 of the fresh water supplies, many people would likely die and drink it unknowingly because they couldn't smell it. So if John is describing this to such accuracy, was there some other event in the past that occurred like this? I was not able to find any descriptions of ancient stories of comets that match this description. And in fact, Noah Goldman, writing for the Deep Impact website, in his review of comets in ancient cultures, said that although they were once regarded as omens of disaster and messengers of the gods, today the scientific approach has helped allay such concerns. So in his research, he did not apparently find any evidence of comets actually hitting the Earth and causing such a disaster. In review, the Wormwood Prophecy says it was a great star. Comets are large. It says that it burned like a torch. Comets are flammable. It fell on a third of the waters, and comets are fluffy snowballs that would break apart. It says that it made the water bitter and many people died. And comets can produce hydrogen cyanide, which many people would not be able to detect and likely die from drinking that water. And lastly, the Wormwood Prophecy is unique in the ancient accounts of things coming from the sky. So what does this mean to you? If John did not make up the story, and the chances that he made it up are very slim, if this had never occurred in the past, then the only other option is that it is a true revelation of future events. And so what I would like to ask you to do is I'd like to ask you to read the book of Revelation and consider that what you read is very likely to happen just as it is written. The opening verses of Revelation offer this promise: "Blessed is he who reads, and those who hear the words of this prophecy, and heed the things which are written in it, for the time is near."